Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world, and welcome to another Office Hours here on Hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram, and I'm the agency trainer here at Agency Success. And every week you get to pop into my virtual office and ask whatever you'd like to ask. And looks like right now, at this very moment, we have refreshing 3 questions in the queue, so plenty of space for you to ask your questions today. The link to do so is there in the chat, along with the link to download today's weekly brief. So let's get started with a little bit of news that is probably important to you if you do agency type things or WordPress type things. A lot to talk about today, especially in regard to core WordPress. So let's dive in. You may have noticed with 8 million emails from all the sites you manage popping into your inbox that there's been a couple of WordPress minor security releases that have gone out in less than a week. So 1 week ago today, 7.0.3 dropped, and then we had another release less than a week later, 7.0.4. So let's talk about that, shall we? WordPress 7.0.3 released last Thursday. 12 separate security issues were addressed in that one. The worst one was related to WordPress login, where an attacker could send a crafted link with some stuff embedded in there. And if an administrator clicks it, it turns it into code running on the server. So that's not great. There were several others that needed at least a contributor account to access, having to do with emoji settings, post content block, quick edit, the post date block, just lots of exploits. And the thing here is the researcher who got credit was Anthropic or Claude and PWNAI and Aikido Security. Those are AI companies. These are not individual researchers. And so you see folks are using AI to find exploits in WordPress that have probably always been there and are just now being turned up as everyone is turning loose their AI tools on the very large volume of code that is in core WordPress. And so ultimately, it's good for all of us. I mean, it's a little annoying to see all those update emails pop in, but it's a good thing because we're finding holes that need to be patched, and we're doing that, thankfully, ahead of people who would want to exploit them. Now, 6 days later, WordPress shipped 7.0.4. This was for a single bug. So what was going on here is you could rename a PostScript file or some other file that was like could embed text as a PNG. And you could upload that. And instead of actually checking whether that was a legitimate format, the WordPress image processor would read what's inside of it. And so if that file contained executable code, then you got a problem, right? Because all of a sudden you're in an authenticated session and there's code being read into WordPress that you don't want WordPress to read. And so if you are an author or hire, it could execute some code and do many, many nefarious things. So Katie is just mentioning in the chat that she is publishing an interview that Corey Miller did with my buddy Tom Rafe at We Watch Your Website about all these things. That's going to be a good one. So anytime you can hear Tom Rafe talk about anything, you should absolutely watch that. So be on the lookout on the hosting.com blog, and that will be helpful. Okay, so that bug with reading the file contents goes all the way back to WordPress 4.7. That's a really long time ago. That has to be probably 2000. Somebody can Google it, but I'm going to guess 2012-ish. Long time. So crazy. So they patched all the versions that were still out there from WordPress 4.7 and forward to deal with that. So you got lots of emails, but there was a good reason for it, and WordPress continues to focus on keeping us all secure. So that's good. In a similar thread, the bug bounty reports to WordPress have jumped from an average of 30 per month up to 450 in July. So WordPress, the bug reports, the security issue reports have been pretty steady for years at 20 to 30 per month. And now all of a sudden, boom, they've popped up. And the reason for that is not that there, or more people trying to exploit WordPress. I mean, there may be, but the issue is people are now using AI tools to find these bugs, like we just talked about, and report them. So that's really good. Security team rep John Blackburn traces that jump to January and February, driven mainly by GPT 5.3 and Opus 4.6. Those were the models that really revolutionized like this. It was an evolutionary jump in what AI tools could do. And so when those models were born and released, we now have more capability to patch holes that already existed in WordPress. PatchStack CEO Oliver Sild says he saw it coming after OpenAI got credit for finding July's remote code execution bug with about $25 worth of tokens. It's crazy. Now, while on the subject of PatchStack, you may remember there have been lots of conversation recently about this new Protect the Shire initiative that the core WordPress has dropped into place, which sort of embargoes WordPress plugin updates to make sure that there's not a supply chain attack involved in that. That's happened a number of times where somebody got access to the actual repo where all the code for a previously legitimate plugin lived, and then they put some exploit in there and it was pushed through normal channels as a regular update, and nobody realized that until it was too late. So all that to say, the Protect the Shire initiative, PatchStack has taken a look at that. And what they've found is that 114 releases that were held with this new pause routine that Protect the Shire has initiated, it runs the same length, the length of the hold, whether the update is a critical security release or whether it's just some regular tweak to the code, cosmetic or functionality or whatever. And the problem with that approach is, okay, let's say you have a plugin that's been exploited and there's actually vulnerable code that's out there. Well, the plugin is still going to be embargoed for a certain amount of time. And it's the same amount of time, whether the plugin is, just has a routine update or whether it's a critical security patch. So PatchStack's own data puts the median time to first exploitation at 5 to 6 hours for heavily targeted bugs. And the current hold time for Protect the Shire is 6 hours. So we've got a little bit of overlap there that somebody's going to need to look at. Now, David Perez, who's one of the co-team leads for the plugin team, has said that there's a new AI-powered review process called Gandalf, which is awesome. I mean, you just have to love that. And so Gandalf is looking at all these plugins, and they're about ready to drop it, turn it loose on this whole process, and that ought to cut down this time significantly. So all that to say, it's a great idea, Protect the Shire. We've got to get this review time down a lot less than it currently is, or somehow allow plugins that have a serious security issue, give them the ability to push through that process. I don't know. It's, of course, then the people who are exploiting the plugin would mark it as a critical security update to push through the process. It's complicated, right? So hopefully Gandalf has all the answers. So there we go. All right, moving right along to the next story. WordPress 7.1 on track for release next week. We've talked a lot about the features in WordPress 7.1 over the last few weeks. I'm not going to do that again today, other than to say, go check out the field guide. It's there. It's a detailed blog post about all the things that are coming in WordPress 7.1. There are a couple of things in 7.1 that I haven't mentioned yet that I will mention here. One is a new icons API. Now, this is pretty cool, because there are certain page builders and you can get other plugins that will let you register an icon set to use in your design. And now this is going to be built into core WordPress. So that's kind of cool. So this new icons API will let you either bring in a commercial or free icon set, or even bring in one that you've created on your own and use it throughout your WordPress install. And so that's going to now be part of core. And I like that. There's also, you may have seen in the previous versions of WordPress, if you're a block editor person, there's the ability to leave block level comments. That's been in there for a couple of versions now as a precursor to the real-time editing feature that's gotten pushed again to the next version of WordPress. But now you can at somebody in a comment and it will send an email to that user letting them know there's a comment to address. So if you're using a comment flow, I'm not sure how many of you actually are, but if you are, it's kind of a cool feature to have in core. And finally, we talked a little bit about this in the speed live stream last week about how WordPress for some time now has included speculative loading in core. Now that's speculative loading basically looks at all the links on a page, and in the background, it tells your browser to preload some of those pages so that when you actually click something, it's like instantly there because it's been preloaded in the background. And now in 7.1, there's going to be some granular controls you can add with code that let WordPress kind of dial in how you want speculative loading to work. So that's kind of neat, very developer-y, but still could be kind of a cool feature. So take a look at that field guide. There's a lot of good stuff there. If you just want to read about WordPress 7.1, it's on track for release next week, August well, it's next week. I think it's August 19th. Yeah, at the end of WordCamp US. Okay, one little note. As WordPress 7.1 drops, something you might want to be aware of is there's been an accessibility ticket in for some time regarding the WordPress admin area and the way, the table that displays pages and posts, the listing table that we have throughout the WP admin area. There's an accessibility issue there with the way the title and the checkbox and all that stuff works in that area. And so they've made a change there that you probably wouldn't even notice it looking at it. It's an accessibility upgrade, but it changes the way those tables are rendered. So what that means is if you have a plugin that somehow affects the way those tables render or adds a column or something like that, if that plugin hasn't updated itself to the new way that WordPress 7.1 writes those tables, then it could be all janky. So just be aware of that. If you test upgrade WordPress 7.1 on some site and the admin tables are a little weird, this is why. And you've got some plugin in there that's impacting the writing of those tables. It's trying to write the old way, and there's a new way, and that plugin needs to update. Hope that makes sense. Just want to put that out there as a heads up. All right, this is an interesting story. WP Forms has been accused of granting admin access through its setup wizard. So according to reports, the WP Forms Lite plugin creates a 1-hour authenticated token that it ships off to its developers or makes available to its own infrastructure during the setup process. Now, you don't realize this is happening. It's happening in the background. So that token gives the WP Forms infrastructure the ability to install plugins without your approval. So Search Engine Journal's Roger Monti installed the plugin and found the setup wizard sent him to a WP Forms run domain without making that clear. And his words in the article are, "I had no idea I was no longer on my site." That's not great. It installed for him WP Mail SMTP and WP Consent, and he couldn't opt out of the process. So that's not great. And so be aware if you're using WP Forms, this is not WS Forms. That's a much different, better pro plugin. The WP Forms plugin with the cute little bear, not great. So just be aware of that. Okay, moving right along. This is a great story. If you just like to dig into the nuts and bolts of how WordPress works, read this whole article. Otherwise, the summary is good. Good enough for you here. But when you go to WordPress admin, like here, and you go to your plugin screen, and you go to the add new, the world is slow today. When you go to the add a plugin thing, okay, this plugin search page, you may notice, like, why in the world are these plugins set to show at the top under featured? And why does the plugin search sometimes not return what I want it to, what I'm actually looking for? Let me show you what's going on here. So a researcher dug into this, and what he found was what's displayed in those search results can actually be controlled by a hook that a plugin can attach onto and manipulate your search results. How about that? It's a publicly available hook in the WordPress admin area. And the researcher discovered that there were over 2,400 plugins in the WordPress plugin directory that were hooking on to that filter and manipulating, or at least doing something to those search results. So Metabox and Slim SEO, both who come from the same vendor, were removing the secure custom fields plugin from the listing and the recommended tabs, which I just think that's funny. Theme Isles Toolkit put its own plugins at the top of the featured tab, pushing out up to 3 genuine featured plugins. So this featured tab, if you had this Theme Isle kit, you'd see a bunch of Theme Isle plugins right here. So, I don't know what you think about that, but Theme Isle pulled its code within a day after this was revealed. Metabox removed theirs after WordPress.org asked them to. I just think it's funny that Metabox removes secure custom fields for so many reasons. But there you go. Maybe you've got, if your search results are weird, or if it's not showing you what you think you ought to, maybe you've got a plugin that's rewriting how your search results actually show up. Oh my. Okay, a couple of quick WooCommerce stories. We've been talking about WooCommerce 11 coming out. There are some things that it can break. This is a version of WooCommerce you want to be careful as you install. Just make sure everything is tested. You want to do that anyway with the major WooCommerce version, but especially this one. So 11.0 has shipped after a delay and quickly followed by an 11.0.1. There is good advantage to upgrading to this version because they have brought in product catalog caching that makes variable product pages in particular much faster. And it also does some changes to the way WooCommerce tracks its own internal analytics that make things more accurate. They've also pulled fully that experimental block-based product editor completely. The follow-up 11.0.1 was a security fix and full compatibility with WordPress 7.1. Now, in the middle of all that, this is great. So WooCommerce sent out an email to 800,000 subscribers, and what they didn't realize was every corporate email scanner that got that email read through all those links and opened them as those corporate security scanners do, and it fully crashed WooCommerce.com. Like fully crashed. So before their auto scaling could catch up to the traffic, boom, it went down. So I think they were down for 3 minutes. Not a huge deal, but like this is a cautionary tale of be careful if you're sending out an email campaign that's that large. Make sure that your server can handle it. This is why a lot of companies trickle out those big broadcasts over the course of a day or even 2. Like Sue is saying, almost no one sends 800,000 emails at once. I mean, even if it's not 800,000, even if you send out 1,000 and you're on bad hosting or you're not caching correctly, 1,000 concurrent users can fully bring down a site if it's not cached correctly, even if it's on semi-decent hosting. So it's just a cautionary tale. Okay. How many of you are using Microsoft Clarity? It's been around for a little while. It's a really cool tool and it's free. They've actually added into their dashboard AI citations. And so if you've wondered, what is it that causes ChatGPT or Claude or whoever to recommend my site or a client's site, this is really good insight into some of the inner workings of that, because it will help you see whether the citation was more of it was your brand or the company name that was searched for in the AI tool, or was it a fuzzy search like web developers in Connecticut or whatever. This is a great tool that just for sake of time, I'm going to move on past this, but if you hadn't played with Microsoft Clarity, especially in a while, this is good stuff and you might want to look at it. Quickly, if you're a Claude user, starting tomorrow, Claude Code is going to turn auto mode on by default. Now, what that means is it's going, if you haven't specifically set your defaults on whether you want Claude to get approval from you for things, it's going to automatically be set to auto tomorrow. Now, what Claude found was people already approve 97% of the prompts it shows them when they ask for approval. I know I do usually. And I've moved to give it all the permissions things for most of my conversations, and I've been doing that for a while. So just anyway, if you notice that, this is what's going on starting tomorrow. Okay, this is the one I want to spend a little bit of time on. This is big news because Anthropic has announced this week that they are watermarking everything Claude creates. Everything. Text, images, artifacts, all the things that it can create are going to bear a watermark that traces its provenance back to being Claude, that Claude had something to do with it. Now, the reason this is necessary is the EU AI Transparency Act. You can Google that. It essentially says if AI produces it, it has to be like flagged or noted somehow that this is an AI generated thing, videos, images, etc. So this is now happening. It's happening now in Claude. It started August the 2nd. Every Claude model launched after August 2 will have the mark. Older models are being retrofitted. So for text, the mark is woven into the text itself with magic of some kind. You can't see it. It doesn't change the writing. And even if you copy and paste, it's like somehow it goes along with the copy and paste. For images, Claude is currently doing that through signed metadata that's embedded in the image. And if you've ever dug into an image, you can see that like some images, like if you take it with your phone, it'll even embed in that metadata the GPS location of where it was taken, that sort of thing. So it travels along with metadata. And this is part of, again, that EU Transparency Act that was signed with all the there's like 190 companies that signed it. But in particular, all the big players, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Meta. So how in the world does this work? Nobody quite knows. It will land, and this is the tricky bit. It will land if Claude processes the text at all, whether you actually wrote the draft and Claude polished it, or whether Claude came up with it from the beginning itself and then you edit it, it's still going to bear that mark. So if Claude edited it, translated it, summarized it, it's going to have this mark. Now, the thing about it is the detected mark says that it just means Claude was involved. It can't tell whether the item is fully AI generated or whether it was created with AI assistance. So the first thing I thought when this came out is, okay, AI, is this like, can Google, for example, read this text blog post that was created with AI and now penalize it because it's AI created? And I don't know for sure, but my suspicion is who the heck doesn't use AI in some way for something, even to edit, a human generated document? I think anybody doing content uses AI to some degree. And so I don't think that's going to be a meaningful signal to maybe demote an item in search results because, my gosh, everybody's using AI. So I don't know. I don't have any inside information. That's just my thought. So if you heavily edit AI generated output, if you paraphrase it or translate it manually, that can gradually wear away the text watermark. The image mark is more fragile. If you resave the image or take a screenshot of the image, it doesn't follow that image. So how to detect the mark is something Anthropic has not released yet, but they have said they will show how to do that in technical documentation that is to come. So that's big news. It's pretty interesting, and just want you to be aware of that. Okay, quickly, we are like halfway through office hours already, and it's been me talking the whole time. Let me just quickly mention our upcoming live streams. Here is our new live streams page. Isn't this cool? We talked about this last week. But there's a bunch of new live streams set up, all of which I am super excited about. Many of which came from our little brainstorm last week when we talked about, hey, what would y'all like to see on agency success live streams? And so Tuesday, we're going to be running through this whole process of, is it agent ready? And so we'll be talking about that tool from Cloudflare and how to use it. And really bigger than that, how to build a process that you can apply to your client sites to make sure they are as friendly to AI agents as possible. That's coming up Tuesday. If you haven't registered for that one, register for it. And hey, look, you can add it to your calendar if you want to, right there. A couple of brand new live streams that came out of that discussion last week. Number one, from page builder to blocks, rebuilding a WordPress site with AI. So we'll be taking a site that was built either in an old page builder or in, maybe it's hand coded or whatever. And we're going to build live that site using core WordPress blocks, or we might use Cadence blocks. I haven't decided yet, but we'll be using Novamira to build that page out. That's going to be fun. So that's coming up Tuesday, September the 8th. And then there is the rescue site audit. Know what you're inheriting before you quote it. So we'll be talking about, again, how to use AI, and in particular, Novamira, to audit a site that maybe somebody comes to you and it's a rescue site. The developer that built it has vanished. That happens a lot, right? And so how do you really know what's hiding under the covers there? And this will be a process to follow. It's built on the process we've done manually in my agency for years, but now we have AI powered it, and it's a whole lot better. So that's coming up on September the 22nd. And there's a couple of more that aren't on the calendar yet that we're going to be building an app for Mac and a web app as well. That's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be coming up in October. So fun stuff coming up with Agency Success live streams, and I do hope that you will register for all of those. Now, let's get into some questions, shall we? Currently, 5 questions in the list. And so if you have questions to ask, the link to do so is in the chat. And we will start with Stacy C. Hey, Stacy. Stacy says, I received this request from a client, a volunteer at the church whose website this is, for, quote, efficiency reasons. They are asking if I can change the calendar widget, currently Pi Calendar, because Modern Events Calendar was too complicated, to simply display a PDF file of a calendar that I upload once a month and let people download it. They sent me a link to another church website that looks like it was built around the time Moses brought the 10 Commandments down the mountain, which is where they got the inspiration for this innovative idea. Oh, Stacy, I love this. This is awesome. I let them know that, yes, this is possible, but it's not a good idea for accessibility and visibility reasons, but I suspect they really don't care, probably. My guess is the parishioners want a printed calendar, and she just doesn't want to do the work twice. Yeah. So I'm wondering if there is a way to make it easier so they still have an accessible calendar on the website, or do I just go ahead and show them how to upload the PDF? If they don't care, I shouldn't. Okay, so pausing on everything else that you just said, This is the takeaway. So quick diversion before we get into the specifics. How many times, you can answer this rhetorically, how many times do you find that you care far more about the client's website than they do? Yeah. Okay. And so, first of all, I get it. Like, it's our thing. We're web people. We like to do this stuff. However, and I want to honor that. Like, there's benefit in giving care to our work, but sometimes it's not worth it. And the care that we bring to the site is really, it's counterproductive because we're overreaching, we're over delivering, spending time and bringing in stress to try to convince a client to do something that honestly just doesn't matter. Is it best to have a calendar on the website? Sure. For a church, and we'd have to know about the size of the church. Is it older people, younger people, that sort of thing? I mean, look, does it matter if it's a PDF? It probably doesn't. And the person at the church office probably knows what their people want. So I don't know. Let's get into the other part of this. Stacy, do you use Novamira? Oh, Melanie actually beat me to it. Yes. So you could, honestly, if this was me, uh, being that we have Novamira baked into everything we do now as an agency, we would upload the calendar to a Claude conversation and say, go fill the calendar on the website with this. And then let that session go and I go work on something else. And 10 minutes later, it's done. That's what I would do here. They would have to send it to me. Yeah, they'd have to send it to you. Um, so that's the thing. You could do that if you, but the bigger question is it a big enough deal? Do they really need that? And that's where you would need to ask the person at the church. Or even better than that, is there currently a page on the site that just shows the events? What do the analytics say? Let the numbers bear out. You could look at this and say, well, there's about 80 people every week that are looking at this page. So I don't know if you really want to change that. So do you have analytics that can direct this decision one way or another, Stacy? Oh, 27 people in the church. Yeah. Okay. So the church admin person is probably right. It probably doesn't matter. And they're already building the calendar. This goes into a whole other conversation about nonprofits. You have someone who's dedicated their resources, paid or unpaid, I don't know what the situation is, and they're building this PDF calendar that they probably print and stick it in a church bulletin or put it on a shelf someplace people can pick up, right? And so they're already doing that. So why not just stick that on the website? I would probably say, yeah, that's what I would do too. Sometimes it behooves us to look at a volunteer organization and help them make decisions on how do we best help you spend your people hours to accomplish what you want to do. And is it with a group that small, is it enough of an investment of time to have to double enter things on a calendar? It probably honestly isn't. Yeah. So it sounds like you've done the right thing. You're saying in the chat, you she responded this morning, acknowledged the concerns, but said she wasn't worried about it. So you just made a little thing with Claude to make it easy for her just to pop in the PDF and it shows up. Great. I would leave it there. That's what I would do. Melanie says, keep that in writing. Melanie works she works a lot with churches and knows the ropes here. Yeah. Interesting. It honestly, probably it's not worth the volunteer time. And TJ's asking questions about accessibility. Yes, it's an accessibility. Well, it might be an accessibility problem, but honestly, a church that small, there are things that you've only got so much people hours to do all the things that a small church needs to do. And so is this something to invest time in? My guess is probably not. That's just me. But I feel your pain, Stacy, especially after you have, sounds like, installed one event calendar and gone to another event calendar, and now they're just like, forget it, we're going to PDF it. I would say cut your losses and do the PDF. That's just me. All right, moving right along to Sue. Sue says, I have several sites that should get interim WP core updates. The update screen said they should. How long should it take to install a small update? Sue, what do you mean by interim WordPress core updates? You mean like the little versions that are like 7.0.4? Yeah. Okay. How long should it take to install? Could there be something in the config file that's preventing? Okay, no. So if like WordPress trickles out these releases to various sites, and you'll see this like whenever it's just not available for everybody, all 43% of the web all at once. They do trickle those updates out. Now, the site does have to be visited. It's a WP cron process to go and find the updated. Oh, it's available. So if the site is sitting there unvisited for some time, it won't know there's an update available. Melanie's saying she had 16 sites, not auto update. Sue says same thing. Interesting. I've not noticed that, but whenever it's a major security issue like 703 and 704 took, I went out there and forced those updates through our dashboard that we manage sites through. Those were big deals, and so we wanted to make sure those got patched. Um, I don't know there. So the answer to your question is, aside from you've told WordPress in a WP config constant only to or not to auto update core at all. And there is a constant for that. It's WP core auto update, something like that. It like you could read it and see what it is. You don't want that constant in your WP config at all because the default behavior of WordPress is to install those minor updates, and that's what you want. So you don't need anything there at all. Now, there are plugins that can affect that. So, for example, you mentioned solid security in your question, and let's just go take a quick look. Other plugins have a similar thing. Let's see. We want to do. It's under site check, version management. Okay, and right here, this only lets you install all. So it's not even, there's not even a setting in solid security that would let you change that other than saying we want everything automatically. But the core WordPress behavior, what this would be changing is even install the major releases like 7.1. I don't want to do that. I want to let that wait a little bit and bake before we install the major version. So yeah, there's not anything that I've told you to add that would change that. My position has always been always install the minor versions, wait for a little bit on the major versions. So that's interesting. I'm not sure why that's happening. That is a good question. Any ideas for Sue as to why that might be happening? That's a weird one, Sue. Sue's saying it could be they're under visited. Perhaps they would have to be not visited. Because like if a site's sitting there, it's like a site backup, right? Like your site's not going to back up if it doesn't get a visitor or something's waking it up because it's just sitting there. Nothing's loading. So the next time a visitor comes, there'll be a whole bunch of stored WP cron processes that kick off and run in the background. And the auto update would be one of those. It could be something. Well, that's interesting, Stacy and Eddie. Same thing. It could be something that's interfering with the WP cron on those sites altogether, Sue. That would be weird, but possible. Is there a way to check for that? Yes. There is a plugin, which I forgot, WP cron control. WP cron control, I think is what it's called. No. WP cron troll. There it is. It is from John Blackburn, who's a core contributor. We'll just quick turn this on. So this is by an excellent developer, and I think it lives under tools or settings or somewhere. Cron events. There it is. Okay. So this will show you all events. There's some schedules here you can take a look at. This will show you everything that's going in your WP cron. And it will let you, if there's some that have failed, it'll show that up here. So no issues here. You would see there, if you have failures, they'll show up here. And sometimes you can go through and delete those and like it'll redo itself. So you can try that, Sue, and just see if it's so pausing, Sue, you've been playing around with Novamira this week. This is something you should do. So go in there, connect Novamira to that site and just tell it what happened and ask it if it can figure out what's going on. Do that. I mean, honest to goodness, that's what we would do if we were actually dealing with that issue on an agency site. Turn Novamira and Claude loose on it. So it'll be smart enough to look at it and go through the cron logs and all of those things. Sue is swimming against the current on this. Doesn't want to try it. You can totally do it, Sue. I know you've had frustration with Claude Novamira and building out blocks. Try this. I bet you'll have a good result. Give that a try. And with that, let's move to our next question from Carla. Sue's asking, in the cron plugin, what term should I look for? It'll show up as failed up here. Yeah. But use Sue, trust me. Try Claude and Novamira one time on this and see what it'll sort out for you. Particularly if the site hasn't yet updated still. Have you manually updated it, Sue? Yeah. So if you have a site that has not yet updated manually to 704, go to that site, put Novamira on it, attach it to Claude, and say, Claude, help me figure out why. So that's a live broken state, and it will go in there and solve the problem for you. There are some showing that they do not allow minor updates. Okay, great. Go in there and tell Claude to figure out why that is. What has switched the default version? Use Novamira, and it will sort that out for you. I promise you it will. Okay, Carla is next here. Hey, Carla. It seems that MCPs are popping up everywhere. Great question. What criteria should we use to evaluate them? Okay, wonderful question. Matter of fact, MCPs are popping up everywhere. Matter of fact, I just found today that my beloved Stream Deck, which is the little box with buttons on it that I use for various things. I have all kinds of macros that kick on smart devices and things. It has an MCP. And so Claude can go in there and do things through Stream Deck, and it's fantastic. Anyway, so an MCP, if you're not aware, is like a translator that sits between some app over here and your AI tool. And it lets your AI tool talk straight through it to the app. It's like an API, but better for AI. It's like an AI-ified API, essentially. So there are MCPs for everything. You can go out there, you can Google MCP library, and there are huge sites with volumes of MCPs out there that are built. Now, here's the problem with that. You don't know who wrote those things, whether they were a horrible coder or partially insane, or if there's a security vulnerability. Now, it's just code, and you can ask Claude to look at that code and see if there's a security exploits. Better than that, you really, as much as possible, want to stick with the official MCPs that are released by, a certain group. Or find, on GitHub, or a lot of these libraries will have reviews and like star rankings and those sorts of things. And you can, don't get an MCP that has like 3 stars on it or whatever. Get one that has lots of reviews and backing and so forth. GitHub is a great spot to find MCPs. We've pulled some from, matter of fact, I even think the Google Workspace MCP that I'm using came from GitHub, but it's like the main one, and it's got thousands and thousands of people who are using it and talking about it and so forth. So it's pretty reliable. So it's a lot like evaluating a plugin, honestly. As you look at a plugin in the WordPress plugin directory, do you, who was the author? Are they, is it the company that wrote the MCP for the thing you want to attach to? Or how many reviews does it have? That sort of thing. It's the same sort of criteria that you would use to evaluate a WordPress plugin. Carla says, example of a major MCP. How do I answer that? Pick a SaaS tool. Like, I don't know, our project management tool that we use called Nifty. Nifty just released their own MCP. So Claude can now talk to Nifty directly through their official MCP. Lots of tools have them now. And that's, you can even build your own MCP if you have the API for it, because you can request all the things from the API and build that into a dictionary in the MCP. Claude will do that for you. Thank you, Stacy, hosting. Rocket.net, we did a live stream on it sometime back. Rocket.net has an MCP that allows your tool to talk directly to the whole infrastructure of Rocket.net. Not only the WordPress site through WP CLI, but also all the hosting infrastructure and the caching and all the things in Rocket.net. And it's super cool. It exposes all those abilities to your AI agent, but it came from an official source. So a lot of, I don't want to say all, most major software products have an MCP. QuickBooks has an MCP. It's fantastic. Let your AI tool talk directly to QuickBooks and sort out all the bookkeeping garbage. It'll do that. Does that help at all, Carla? Try to get the official MCP is the answer here. See if your tool has an official MCP and then use it. Yes, Claude has a process to hook up an MCP to WHM cPanel. If you have access to the API keys section of WHM, you can connect your AI tool directly to WHM. It's pretty cool. Okay, and so there is a little bit of a difference between a connector, like if you're using Claude or ChatGPT, they have connectors that let you connect directly to a tool like Claude to Canva, ChatGPT to Canva, that sort of thing. Those connectors are basically the same thing as an MCP. Claude to Slack, exactly. Elizabeth, can it move all QuickBooks data to a new accounting program that it creates? I would not. So the answer is yes, probably, but I would not try to build your own accounting software. Go to a free one like Zoho Books, which is pretty darn good. And Zoho does have an MCP, and I've never tried it, but my theory is you could probably pull everything right over. MCPs are fabulous. Novamira, a great MCP. All right. Carla, does that answer your question well enough? Don't just go grab an MCP off the shelf that you've never seen or heard of the developer and has no reviews whatsoever, because you don't know what's in that code, and it might be granting backdoor access to something. Although I'll tell you, I've never run across those, but my suspicion is if I attached one of those to my Claude and it looked at what was going on, it would say, there's something fishy going on here. And I would ask my Claude to evaluate the code in this MCP before it actually used it. Carla, do I need multiple MCPs? Yeah, so you need an MCP for every tool that you want to connect Claude to. So I don't know how many MCPs we have connected in the Brilliant WebWorks world. Many, 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 many. Dozens of MCPs. You need an MCP connects Claude to one thing. So there is a Google Drive MC or Google Workspace MCP, a QuickBooks MCP, a Canva MCP. So it's a translator for one tool and your AI tool. So you need one for everything you want to connect to. Does that make sense? Novamira, for example, MCP for WordPress sites. But Novamira is not going to connect you to QuickBooks. All righty. Anything else on that, Carla? Great. All right. Cheryl is next. Oh, you know what? Stacy just made a great point. If you have Novamira, you wouldn't need, for example, a Cadence MCP if they came out with one. And that's a great thing to think about. So as you're looking at all the MCPs out there, there is, for example, a Google Workspace MCP that gives you access to everything in Google Workspace: mail, calendar, docs, anything in Google Drive, all the Google things. There are also MCPs for Gmail, or for the mail part only, or for the Drive part only, right? They're just a subset of what you could get with the bigger MCP. And you just have to decide, which one of those do I want? Do I only want to give Claude access to my mail or my calendar? Then just use the calendar MCP. But if you want Claude to have access to your whole workspace, you don't need all the single ones. Just get one for all of Workspace. That's a great point, Stacy. Okie dokie. Moving on to Cheryl. Hey, Cheryl. Let's see. We are, by the way, down to one more question after this, and we still have a little bit of time. So if you have a question to ask, please use the link that is in the chat. Okay, Cheryl says, I have some sites in legacy themes going back to Genesis, but I was asked by someone new to WordPress who also wants to use Novamira what theme they should use. Oh boy. Can you make a fresh start recommendation for a person like that? I wondered if bricks might be the answer, but I'm open. Wow, this is a great question. Okay, so Cheryl, is this person new to web or just new to WordPress? That is an important question. Okay, just new to WordPress, but they have some background with web development. Are they more technical or are they more like designer marketing emphasis? Okay, a retired Oracle database guy. So here's the thing. Bricks is awesome. It's a great, it is also, it has a very, very high learning curve. So you got to invest in it. If you want something that is just as simple as possible out of the box, probably, core blocks might be your best bet. It really just depends. So yeah, Stacy, I was heading that direction too. So this goes into a whole conversation that many of you have asked me, both on private calls and in direct messages about what in the heck's going on with Cadence. And I don't want to get into all of that, but I will say that we are, not actively, but on the back burner, um, looking at options if we should decide at some point to move away from Cadence as our core theme for various reasons. And you all know the things, right? So my thought, you really have, there's a fork in the road on this. Am I going to go all in on blocks or do I want to do something that's not blocks or that's not, and blocks is the wrong word. Do I want to go all in on the site editor, which is, the replacement for the customizer and it's like full site editing, that whole thing? Or do I want to stay with something that's kind of a hybrid? And so if you want to go all in on full site editing, it's really hard at this point today to beat Ollie. The Ollie theme is really, really good. It's really good. If you want to go more of a hybrid, like a Cadence-ish approach, where you've got blocks, but you're still in the customizer, generate blocks, probably your best option. I would not wish my worst enemy on Divi, but that's just me personally. Bricks is a great tool, learning curve very high. However, you can Novamira writes into bricks and builds into bricks very well. Like it works. It's one of the first specializations they offered. And I've even built out a landing page in bricks on a site as a test, and it worked great. And you can edit that area pretty easily. And it builds accessible, fast content. Problem is, the average user is going to really struggle to work with bricks. I struggle to work with bricks. So, no, not WP Bakery. So, you could look at the question here is, what would you do if you're recommending to a brand new person? Look at Ollie. Bloxy's a good option. Generate Press. Those are the three that I would look at. If they really, really want to dive in head first, bricks. It's Ollie WP. The really cool thing about Ollie is their menu designer. I'm not sure if they do anything special here. Look, isn't this a pretty menu? It's really not even that detailed here, but the Ollie menu designer is one of the best implementations of the full site editing flow into a really beautiful buildable menu. It's really awesome. Yeah. So Cheryl, does that help? It's a tough one. Because and see, this is the hard part, y'all. With as fast as things are moving right now today, I mean, what's going to be around next year? I don't know. I don't know what's going to be around next year. It's hard to predict. Ollie is a theme and it has patterns built into it. Let's just take a quick look. The Ollie Pro plugin has all of like it has block sets. Like what am I trying to say? I've lost the technical term. Block sets of like pre-designed. What am I trying to say? Patterns. Thank you. Block patterns. That's what I mean. Great patterns. Lots of stuff out of the box. It's super easy to build with. Also, it has this gorgeous menu designer. Look at these menus. Like you can build all this in the block editor visually with Ollie. It's pretty cool. It also does really, really well with WooCommerce. And it's not super expensive. $300 a year for 100 websites for an agency. So that's about on par with other things. So not bad. We probably would not do demo or training on any one theme in particular. Ollie is a block theme, meaning it is built around full site editing. Melanie's asking, I'm using Beaver Builder and Astra. Am I way behind? No, we're still using Beaver Builder. I still, it's 2026, and I still think, for me, that Beaver Builder is the best balance of a tool that we can build with and do great technical things with, and still be easy enough for the average client that we serve to build a page. So I'm still in Beaver Builder, but our core theme is Cadence right now. Okay, let's move along. There's lots of questions there. Let's keep going. Tanya is next. What hosting environment is required to use Novamira? Can you use it on sketchy hosting? Oh, Tanya, I just got to say, I love all of you. Tanya always makes me laugh. So sketchy hosting that a customer bought 4 years ago and is now locked in forever. Okay. So yes, Novamira requires PHP 8. And so if you're still on 7.4, it's not going to work. But as long as it's PHP 8, as of today, that's the requirements. So there you go. How quickly it will work, or does that host have some weird, who knows what stuff in the way that, gets in the way of Novamira working? Maybe, and you'd want to know that. You just try it and see if it's blocked. We've tried to. The only hosting issue we've ever had with Novamira is old site on 7.4 wouldn't work, and a new site in a very, I'll just say this, a very opinionated hosting platform. Definitely not hosting.com. A very opinionated hosting platform that has ridiculous security constraints, and it just wouldn't connect because of the way their platform was. So there you go. Anyway, moving along. Okay, it is after 2 p.m. We'll do one more question and we're done. Oh, here's good. Okay. Paul says, what are the pros and cons for deleting a session in Claude? Okay, this is a question that can go super deep or it could be very surface. I'm going to try to answer it about neck deep and we'll call it a day. How's that? So what happens when you delete a session in Claude? It goes through and deletes the work tree and everything else that it built to, and timing out here. Paul, you mean Claude Code, right? Or do you mean Claude Chat? I'm assuming you mean Claude Code. Okay. So when Claude Code launches, it creates its own little work tree based in the folder or the GitHub repo or whatever that you've given it to start in. And it's creating its own little file structure around that. There's a little mini virtual machine that's created for that. And so when you delete it, all that stuff gets wiped out. Now, how's the best way to describe this? It depends on how you set up Claude Code. If you are just operating one off, then if you delete the session, you've lost all of its archives or whatever, unless you've told it to store those things someplace else. Deleting the session wipes out all the things. If you are building around something larger, like I've briefly mentioned in other places, like an agency OS that's like in GitHub or whatever, then whenever you finish a session, you're going to want to commit all that stuff back up to your main so that everything is together. And if you do that, then you can delete the session, no problem. It just cleans things up on your machine. And so that's the way we use it. And so we clean up after we do a run, we push and merge, and then it's all clean. We can delete the session if we want to. Sometimes I delete sessions, sometimes I don't. But because we're preserving the work the session creates in a different place, that answers the question for us. I don't know. I probably just confused everybody. Does that make sense? Probably if you're not using Claude Code the way I just described in terms of GitHub, it doesn't really matter because you're just using it for a one-off thing that you've built and you've got those files or whatever someplace and you can delete the session. Just make sure you store all of the things that it's built someplace. Okie dokie. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of the questions for today, and that will therefore wrap up office hours. We'll be back on Tuesday for the live stream I'm looking forward to very much, called Is Your Site Agent Ready? And we'll be looking at the Cloudflare tool that will scan your site and tell you how AI agents are going to interact with it. I'm going to give you some best practices for that and a process that you can use with or without that Cloudflare tool to evaluate how well your sites are going to do. All right. For those of you heading to WordCamp US, have a great time. I will not be attending that event this year, unfortunately, but make sure you bring very cool clothes because it is very warm in Phoenix. But I do hope you enjoy that time. I'll be back here on Tuesday for that live stream on Is It Agent Ready, as well as office hours next week as well. Have a great weekend. Don't do any work. Have a lot of fun with your friends and family. Do some stuff you like to do. And I'll see you back here Tuesday on hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.